Hi everyone! Come along with me as we make a tunnel book or a 3D landscape. Before we start, let's talk about a landscape. We have a horizon line which separates the sky from the ground. Anything in the front is called the foreground, where these bushes are. And you could see that the bottoms of the bushes are closer to the bottom of the paper. As they go further back into space, the bottoms will get higher up towards that horizon line and they will start to get smaller. And since the fountain is also in the foreground like those first two bushes, the bottom is closest to the bottom of the paper. I'm pointing out here the bottom of each object. On your paper, you're going to measure an inch border. Now, whatever size you make, you're going to need 3 or 4 pieces of paper the same size. This book is 5 inches by 7 inches. I'm using a T-square to help me get a nice straight line. And just once you draw the line, you're drawing a border, we're going to cut it out like a window. You're going to need 1 piece of paper that we're not going to cut, and 2 or 3 sheets that we will cut a window in. This is a razor blade or an X-Acto knife you can use to cut. If you're working with kids, or you are a kid, I have an easier way that's not as dangerous as using a knife. We'll use a scissor. So after I cut this out, I'm going to show you how to cut this with a scissor. There we go. Let's take that out. Here's our first frame. Do that again 1 or 2 times so that we have a foreground, a middle ground, and a background. Measure an inch again so all of the borders are the same. So take your scissor, you're going to fold just a little bit, kind of give it a pinch in the middle, cut to make a hole, and from there cut around the inside of your border. Make sure you have your parents' permission to use your scissors, and especially don't ever use an X-Acto knife if you don't have permission from your parents or if you're a young child. Okay, cut the last one out. And here we go. Here's the background. For this project, I'm going to use a photo that I found in a book of a landscape. Another option you could do is you could draw directly on your paper. So there are many ways that you could do this. Ignore the accordion folds because I am later in the video, I'm going to show you how I did that and I'm going to redo it. Okay, so glue it on with your glue stick. Now, you're going to take one of the frames and we're going to start building a landscape in front. Measure a piece of paper that is a little bit wider than the window. So it has to be able to touch the frame because you're going to glue it on. So also the landscape has to be lower than the horizon line of the background. Okay, so add your glue. I'm just cutting out a piece of green paper to look like the grass. On another piece of paper, I'm coloring some bushes to put in the foreground and the middle ground. I'm just pressing darker and lighter to get the different values. Cut those out. Now I'm going to glue them on to the foreground. The foreground in a picture is the part that looks closest to us. So I'm also going to use this postcard that I made of one of my paintings, and I'm going to cut out the fountain because I think it would fit perfectly in my landscape. This works best in the foreground because it's pretty big. Now we're going to make the grass for the middle ground. The middle ground is the space between the background and the foreground. If you notice, the middle ground is going to be higher than the foreground, but lower than the background. The back. Looks pretty good. I'm adding a potted plant to the middle ground. I'm taking a darker green and I'm making some little lines to make it look like grass on top of the green paper. I decided to add another layer. Now this is actually going to be the foreground because it's now the closest. And I'm putting some grass in the front, and now this is where I'm going to glue the fountain. I think it would look really nice in front of both of those two layers. Okay. I'm measuring those bushes that I made for the middle ground, and I'm going to make sure they're a little bit bigger because I'm making the same ones for the foreground. Things that are closer to us seem bigger. So let's say these bushes are the same size if you had them next to each other, but since those two in the center are further back than the foreground, we are going to see them a little bit smaller. They're going to look smaller to us. So make sure that you make the ones in the very front the biggest. As things get further away from us, they start to look smaller. I'm going to glue them on. Oh, let's add more grass. There we go. There's one. And the other. Okay, before we glue it on, we're going to make a cover. So if you want this to be a book and you want a nice little cover, make another piece of paper that's an inch longer than your other sheet and just fold it over that edge. I'm going to flip it so that it opens on the left. And you're going to glue that little flap to the back of that frame. Go ahead and decorate your cover and give it a title. Now let's create the sides that are going to hold the book together. These are called concertinas, and they're accordion folded. What we're going to do is cut a piece of paper where the height is the same height as the rest of your book. So here it's 5 inches. Measure 1 inch from the beginning so that we can make it the same size as your border. And from there, you're going to fold accordion style, back and forth. Cut off that little extra piece. Do the same thing with one more sheet of paper that's the same size. Notice that there are mountains and valleys. Flip your paper so that the tab of the valley is on the top of your background. So I'm actually gluing this onto another piece of paper that I'm going to later place my background on top of this. There we go. Fold in 2 flaps and put glue on the next flap. Take the first layer out that comes after your background. So I basically have 2 middle grounds in this book. This is the first one, the one that's furthest away from the front. Glue it in. Next fold, put some glue on both sides, and take the frame that is the next closest to the viewer. So this is the second middle ground here, closer to the foreground. Fold it in again and again. This is going to be the final layer, the one that has the cover, and this is the foreground. This is the one that's closest to us. There we go. Great. I'm putting some clips on until it dries. Now you have your tunnel book. You can open it up and have fun looking at this 3D landscape that you created. Teachers, if you do this with your class, you can do a lot of creative activities with this project. For example, you can connect it to academic classes like geography and create 3D landscapes of different places around the world. It doesn't only work for grass, it can also work for water. So here's an example of a boat on the ocean. If you want a handout with the directions, just head over to my store on Teachers Pay Teachers, where I heard you can draw, where you can download this and pass it out to your students and they can follow along. See you next time. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.